First film I watched was Spencer, and it was directed by Pablo Larraín, Larraín. He also directed Jackie, Emma, and Neruda, so he has a lot of experience with biographies and movies like that. So it's really no surprise he did a really wonderful job doing Diana, or Spencer here. So what was this movie about? So a very brief summary. This movie is about, it's like a fictional interpretation of what might have happened while Princess Diana spent Christmas at the Queen's Sandringham estate. So she went on like a little mini Christmas vacation with the royal family. We don't really know exactly what happened there or what went on, but what we do know is that everyone was like really, really paranoid about paparazzi, especially at this time because Princess Diana was extremely popular with everyone worldwide. And so she gets there late because she drove herself because people aren't letting her have her own space. And so she escapes social situations, tries to drive herself alone, no security detail, no nothing. She gets lost in the middle of nowhere, is trying to find the place. She ends up being there late. But the entire time she's struggling with an eating disorder. And in contrast to this, a lot of screen time is given to the head chef who's explaining the night's menu, like every night, like every meal that they have. It's a shot of the chef in the kitchen telling everyone what to make, how to make it. And they do a few references to Princess Diana, like wanting her to eat their food because they're really excited about it. But there is a theme of Princess Diana always feeling constantly watched, constantly judged. And this is especially amplified after finding out that the new head butler left a biography of Anne Boleyn on her bed. She had been reading that biography because she thought someone had just like left it there on accident, but she found out like the person who was watching her the entire time is the one that put it there. So that was kind of like a weird traumatic experience for her because as she's going through this really stressful time, she starts hallucinating and seeing Anne Boleyn everywhere. And just to like recap, Anne Boleyn was the wife of Henry the 14th, who got beheaded because he fell in love with someone else. She was the first wife. So her situation kind of directly related to that of Princess Diana. So Princess Diana was like really freaked out by this, or at least she was in this fictional adaptation. That would have made a lot of sense. But right after seeing Anne Boleyn everywhere, she like starts morphing into her in her own mind, that sort of thing. She denies couple dinner, and like she denies going to dinner a few times to escape having to eat in front of everyone. And so she ends up going to investigate her childhood at home, which is on the Sandringham Palace property, which is really convenient. And so anyway, she, like, this building is dilapidated, like it's falling in on itself, and she decides she wants to go in it anyway in this crazed, not like, she's not crazy, she's mentally ill. Really, she's having a very hard time dealing with everything that's going on with her, having a really hard time figuring out her space mentally, how she can be there for her sons, how she's going to navigate this new relationship between Camilla and Charles. They're not even divorced yet, but this is like, in this span of time, it's theorized that this is when she decided to divorce Charles. So she ends up going to her childhood room, she ends up sobbing in her room, and she contemplates throwing herself down the stairs, but she hallucinates Anne Boleyn telling her not to, and Anne Boleyn, apparently she had like a painting of Henry the 14th that she wore around her neck. Is this still recording? Yes, perfect. Okay, sorry. It like glitched there for a second, but Anne Boleyn had a painting of Henry the 14th that she wore around her neck. A lot. And so Diana was given pearls, the same pearls that Charles had given Camilla. And so she kind of like went down the rabbit hole with that, and Anne Boleyn ripped off her necklace, or like talked about ripping off her necklace, and Diana ripped off hers, sent the pearls down the stairs, and she walked back safely, obviously, because Diana doesn't die then. But the movie ends with her freeing her sons from having to shoot quails for sport, because they were really, really nervous about that, did not want to kill living things. And so she grabs them and drives them away, and they're listening to music in a convertible, no security detail, nothing whatsoever. She kind of just grabs them, leaves, back to London. And the end scene is them ordering KFC in London and just being a family, which is really, really sweet. So, what theater did I see it in? I went to go see this movie in the Landmark Century Center Theater. It was really fun. I used a CTA to get there. It was only about like a 45-minute ride with delays because they were working on the Brown line. There weren't many people in the theater because I saw it in the middle of the day, but the people who were there didn't really make a lot of noise. There wasn't a lot of like excitement about this movie just because it's about such a really difficult subject. It wasn't a comedy, so like not everyone was like, there was no laughter. Really, no one ever reacted to the film in maybe ways that they would. So the vibe of the theater was really fun. Like the theater itself was really, really cool. There are like lots of ramps and stairs and escalators and elevators going everywhere, so it's a little difficult to figure out where you're going. But I figured it out eventually, so that was really good. But no, I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. It was just really quiet when the first time I went. So watching Spencer in the theater really amplified the emotions that were portrayed in this film, especially just being in the dark and there weren't very many people there. So it's kind of like I was like sitting in Diana's mind watching this all play out. And it was really, really sad. This movie actually made me feel really, really anxious. And I was worried about Diana the whole time. One thing that I did notice and that stood out to me though was that Charles, like the actor Charles, was way more attractive than the real Charles is, and that kind of threw me off because at first I thought like, is that actor like a distant cousin? Is he just like some random dude at the royal family? Like it wasn't very clear that he was supposed to be Charles until they had an argument, and I was like, oh right, because it's like they got the acting really good, just like the looks did not match at all. Like this actor for Charles was really attractive, and no offense to the prince, but Prince Charles is not. Like nothing really matched there, so it was hard to tell with the casting. But yeah, that's the one thing that surprised me or stood out. I really actually did like the movie. It was really, really good. I think it gave a very good insight to what it's like to live with an eating disorder, especially when you're being surrounded by that many people all the time. But I'd recommend the film for someone who wants to know more about Princess Diana or more about the situation. I absolutely would not recommend this film to anyone who's ever had an eating disorder or anyone who wants to have a good night because it's really depressing, especially knowing how Diana's story ends with her death and everything. But yeah, it was a good movie. I liked watching it. So what can I take from this film, and how does it connect to what I learned in film studies? So this film really, it's about suffering in silence. The way that color is used in this film really ties back to what we learned about color and saturation. For example, one of the main motifs in this film were the curtains. So they were always open in Diana's room, despite the staff warning her about paparazzi. And when she felt most trapped, and all the scenes that she felt trapped, like, they were always closed, so there was no light coming in. So daylight is very, very indicative of Diana's mood in this movie. And I think, like, learning about color and saturation and light in the way that I did in this class really prepared me for being able to understand it in this movie as well, which is really, really cool. And if I could have any prop from the movie, I don't know if this counts as a prop, but I really, really love her green silk dress that she wears in that one scene to dinner. Alright, so the second film that I watched is House of Gucci. It was directed by Ridley Scott, and he also directed Alien, the original Blade Runner, and Thelma and Louise, which we watched in class, which is really cool. So he's like a little bit more of he's like a bigger director than the first guy who directed Spencer was. I didn't really get that through his work because I didn't really like House of Gucci, but we'll get into that later. So this movie was all about, like, Patricia. She's like the main character. She's poor. Her dad runs a truck company, like a bus company or something, but she marries into the Gucci family, and eventually she like unravels it all while trying to take control. So Patricia meets Mauricio at this disco party in the 70s, and they dance all night and they fall in love, and then they leave. They don't see each other for a few weeks. She sees him in a bookshop a few weeks later, corners him into conversation. He has no clue who she is, and there's like this montage into, like, she asks for a date, he says yes, they fall in love, and they get married. But Mauricio's dad doesn't come to the wedding because he thinks that she's a gold digger, which isn't true at the time, but it definitely becomes true. So after being rich and So it's like time passes, they get married. It's really, really cute. So after that, after they're married, they have a little girl together. It's really cute. But Patricia eventually meets Maurizio's family at her uncle's birthday party. So she is able to charm the pants off of family, gets Maurizio back into the family business, makes him successful. But in the process of making him successful, she like convinces Maurizio to betray her family, including like her cousin, his cousin, his dad, and eventually his uncle as well. Like gets them put in jail for tax fraud, has them sell shares in the company, that sort of thing. Really just backhanded betrayal, basically. But after that, Maurizio gets a bigger role at the company, but he's like now rich and successful. He gets tired of being bossed around by Patricia all the time. And Patricia, like usually I wouldn't call a woman bossy, especially if she's like being in charge and doing what a boss does. But she pushes him around quite often, is like really, really, really not looking out for his best interest as like someone in a relationship would. She's very self-centered in everything that she does, and is using Maurizio for his money at this point. He's done. He leaves her for like a friend that he met in Sweden after like there's this whole other subplot that just didn't make sense. But he leaves Patricia for a woman he met in Sweden. And Patricia gets incredibly jealous. Like she's livid. She's like being taken care of and like she's fine with her child, but she's like really, really mad. So she hires this hitman to take out her husband. And then they're all found out, they get tried, and they're all guilty, and they all go to jail. And so now no one in the Gucci family runs the company because it's been bought up by like foreign shares and things like that. And that's told throughout like the movie, like that's alluded to. So this story is basically about greed and betrayal. But I also saw this one in the Landmark Century Theater. Same vibe there, except the audience was a lot more active for this one than the Spencer movie. I think it has something to do with like the time that I went. For Spencer, I remember going like in the middle of the day. Excuse me. And then here I remember going like in the late afternoon around like 7-ish. So there were more people there like to get popcorn, use the restroom during the film. There were a lot more people there, period. So there's a lot more reaction. Like there were little laughs here and there, but it's not really a comedy. But this vibe was a lot more lively than the last time. Like the mini bar was open. It was really fun. And honestly, like watching this movie in the theater was a little bit boring. I thought there would be more action. Than there was. But like the whole movie kind of ended up being like just talking the whole time. So I was really excited to see Lady Gaga kick some butt. But unfortunately that didn't happen. She hired someone to do it for her. Really disappointing. But no, it was an okay movie. I just thought, like, it would be more fun than it was. Like, I had a different expectation of it because the trailer looked really good. The movie was, like, lackluster in comparison. But as far as the movie, like, what the movie made me feel, I kind of just got annoyed towards the middle of it. And then I felt really bad for the daughter at the end because, like, she's now an adult living her life knowing all this happened. Like, I can't even imagine having to know, like, my mom went to jail for killing my dad. Like, that's a lot of therapy. But no. So one of the things that stood out most to me was Adam Driver's really bad Italian accent. Like, he kept breaking out of it in the middle of a sentence and just completely ruining the scene. So you'd, like, hear this Italian dude, and then you'd be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was watching Star Wars, because it's Kylo Ren all over again. Like, it's just, he breaks out of it so much, it was really bad. Lady Gaga's accent was spot on, but I think she is Italian, so that would make sense. But it just ruined the whole thing for me. So it was entertaining because it was funny, but it wasn't a choice that they made going through the film, like the filming process. It wasn't a choice to have him break accent. It was just like seemed out of place. But no, I didn't really like this movie. It was boring up until the last 15 minutes because that's when the murder happens. And basically the majority of this plot is just like sneaky little conversations, which is really interesting at the beginning. And then it gets really boring after 2 hours of sneaky conversations. Like, it was just annoying at that point. But I would really only recommend this movie to people who really love Lady Gaga, or people who have 3 hours of time that they're willing to never get back. It was okay. But this movie, as far as like connecting it back to class, this movie really could have used some Fabula cards. It was like really, it was just everywhere with the plot. Everything was said so quickly, so it's really hard to remember like what's going on where, who's this relationship, like who said what, because why. So I really would have really liked to have a better way to effectively organize everything. That would have been really, really nice. But if I could keep one prop from this movie, it would have to be Maurizio's Vespa. It's like a little tan and white scooter, and it's really, really cute, and I really want that Vespa. Alright, so the film that I watched online was called the Lawrence Jordan album, Water and Light. And I watched it online at the, from like Facets. So that would be on Fullerton. But I didn't actually go there because it was online. But it was really, really cool. It was made in 1983 and made and directed by Lawrence Jordan. He's an American filmmaker who's like really close with Orwin Welles, which is really interesting. He also directed and made Sophie's Place, Our Lady of the Sphere, and more. So like a lot of artsy, more visual work. So this movie was actually an animated photo collage of his time aboard a boat abroad. And he took pictures of everything on the boat, but he really focused on how the light reflected off of water in particular. So the shots he took were mesmerizing. Like, they were really, really cool. If you've seen those, like, satisfying videos of, like, waves going over and crashing, it was kind of like that, but from 1983, I think it was. Yeah, from, like, 1983, which is awesome. So, like, the camera quality was low, and it was a little bit grainy, but it was, like, in a nostalgic kind of way, so that made it really, really nice. It also had, like, a song choice that went really well with the content. There's nothing worse than, like, trying to watch a calm video with, like, weird audio. But the fun thing about this movie was that it was only 8 minutes long. I paid 99 cents to watch it, but it felt like it took a lot longer time to see it all the way through because each picture just captured my attention each time. So usually with like a short film, it would feel like over in a second. And it, in comparison to an actual movie, it was very short. But like there wasn't a time where I was like waiting for this to be over, which was really, really nice. So, unfortunately, this movie did not, well, not unfortunately, but this movie didn't really tell a story. It was more like, I don't even know, it was just like one big photo collage. So it didn't really tell a story that we would know, but I'm sure for Lawrence Jordan and the people that are making it with him, it's all about the memories that it brings back. So this film, like, doesn't really have a story to us, the audience, but that doesn't mean it's storyless. It just doesn't have like a plot. So I was sitting right here in my bed where I've been filming all of these little videos throughout these couple weeks. But I've been sitting here on my bed and I was watching it, and my roommate actually ordered Thai food tonight. I actually watched it tonight, and now I'm filming all of this in the last part tonight as well. So we ate Thai food and I watched it, so I was a little distracted at the beginning, but the rest of the film went on. I got really interested, so I like put my fork down. And I watched it on my laptop. So my laptop, I don't even know its dimensions, but it's a lot bigger than my phone, obviously. But, so that was really nice. I couldn't get it on my TV, mainly because I have a Google Comcast thing that would make it really hard to work YouTube like that. Plus working the internet on the TV is so stupid anyway. It just takes a lot of time. But yeah, no, this movie made me feel really peaceful. It almost made me... So that movie almost made me sleepy, but the continuation of the music progressed really, really well, so it kept, like, making each scene even more interesting and more interesting and more interesting. So it kept me interested in what was going to pop up next, so it was peaceful, but not to the point where you wanted to fall asleep watching it, which is really nice. But I did like this movie. It wasn't something that I'd normally watch it, like, voluntarily or choose on my own, but that's not necessarily, like, a bad thing. I wouldn't really recommend it to a friend out of nowhere, but if someone said, hey, you know what, I really love, like, an animated photo album, I'd be like, I have a recommendation for you. So it's, like, it's not a film that I would go see with someone on my own, But it was really interesting, and I'm glad that I watched it, and I'm glad like I opened my mind to that, because it was really nice. I really liked it in that sense. But yeah, no, I watched this movie alone. My roommate was here, but I watched on my laptop with my earbuds because we do our own thing. Plus, we're like packing tonight and stuff like that, so it's just a little bit easier. Um, but no, something that really stood out to me was like, it was just so pretty. Like the way that he used light and the way that he was able to like capture attention with just pictures and music was really, really cool. That really stood out to me. And then I think this film took a really different approach to making a movie than anything I've experienced in this class. So connecting it back to that is one main thing that I learned through this class was to think outside the box, and this movie really, really did that. There were so many, like, there could have been so many stories attached to this that just didn't get told. Like, how did you even get here? What was this idea for? What are those people on the boat doing? Like, what's their job? That sort of thing. But none of it was addressed. I think, like, obviously that was done intentionally, and I think I really liked how it turned out. But no, I really, really love that, and I think that's, like, really coincides with one of the main things that I learned in this class is you can think outside the box, and it doesn't have to be conventionally good, because it's art and it's useful and as that purpose. But no, there aren't very many props in this movie, again, because people aren't, like, being filmed as actors, so they don't have anything to act with. But there were cows in the background, and I would like a cow, because I think they're cute, and I know a barn I could store it at, and I think that'd just be fun to have a cow. But yeah, that was my last movie that I watched online. As far as, like, class structure and all of that goes... But no, I really, really, really loved how this class was structured. It felt like taking a break from, like, a lot of the stress that came with homework and assignments and, like, written essays and things like that. But not in, like, a lazy, oh, it's so easy kind of way. Like, it was just it was exercising a different part of my brain that I wasn't using all the time. Because I had been, like, writing a lot this semester. Like, I stayed up, pulled an all-nighter to get a final paper done, and that was really stressful for me. So I really liked being able to have a creative outlet, and having an intentional creative outlet was really, really nice. So I love how this class was structured that way. And it's also something that I really like to learn about. So the curriculum was amazing. I really like to watch all those movies. Excuse me. And I really like how we were given assignments for each film that we had to do. So I had another film class this semester, and it was pretty just like free reign, open world, kind of like do your own thing, figure it out, be creative. So like, what does that even mean to be creative? And I really like how you structured it to have certain criteria without expecting a certain outcome. Like, you weren't expecting everyone to make the same kind of movie. You weren't expecting everyone to make the same kind of plot. You weren't expecting one specific story, and if we got it wrong, we got everything wrong. I really like how you gave us some parameters to work within that didn't limit creativity. I think that really, really helped me personally, because it gave me a goal to strive for and look forward to without having to feel the pressure of, am I doing this right all the time? And it was okay to get something wrong, because getting it wrong could still be right. Like, there's no wrong answer to being creative, which is another thing that I learned in this class. There's no wrong answer to being creative. As far as things that I would change, things I didn't like, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of this specific assignment, just because, like, this semester was really, really difficult for me. There were a lot of times where I didn't even feel like getting out of bed to be productive, and so getting out of bed to go sit on a train, to go sit in the dark, to go sit on a train, to go, like, do what I was doing previously didn't really sound fun. But it did get me out of the house, and I did do it, so it's possible. So I guess, like, I'm just complaining about that. But no, that's, like, the one critique. And also, it would have been, yeah, I didn't like writing the CTA alone. Like, for Spencer, I went alone. And then for House of Gucci, I went with Sarah. And with Sarah it was fine, but, like, getting there and getting back with Spencer, that's why I went in the middle of the day, is because I didn't really want to go at night alone. But other than that, I think that's really, my critique as far as that goes. So what stuck out to me? Something that really stuck out to me was the value you put on individual thought and interpretation. I really love how you allow us to be creative and still give us something to work on. Like, there was no point in this semester where I thought my idea was stupid, or I thought like I did an assignment completely wrong, or I just did not understand how to do an assignment. Because you made it like really clear like what the objective was, what I was supposed to add, what I was supposed to do, and like you did all of that without judging or critiquing creativity. It was always the technique that was focused on. And I really appreciate that. Just because you can teach someone how to do things, you can teach someone how to film something correctly, you can teach someone how to hold a camera, right? You can teach someone how to tilt a camera, but you can't teach someone how to be creative in their own way. And so I really like how you didn't try to like mitigate that. I've had professors like in writing classes try to tell me how to be creative, and it just never works. It's like really awkward. But that's something that really stood out to me, is like I really like how you did that. And it was like it took a lot of effort, I'm sure, and I really appreciate it. As far as something that I learned, I've pretty much already shared everything like technically that I've learned throughout this class, whether it be in class with you or throughout this video. But one thing that I really learned that was really important was actually about myself, and I learned that I'm a really good director. So like this year was my first year taking any kind of film classes, and I really enjoyed most of it. And I've always been a good leader, I've always been a good speaker, that's like not the problem. We already know that. But it took, I never really tapped into visualizing what I wanted to see on a screen and then telling people what to do in order to get to that final product. And I realized I'm really good with figuring out the steps that I need to take in order to do that. I'm really good at figuring out like the way I want this to look and how to make it look exactly that way on camera. And that was really, really fun, and I'm really, really glad that I learned how to do that, and I'll be honing that skill more in the future, and I'm so excited to use it. So thank you so much for that opportunity. That was really nice. As far as things that I would have liked to learn about or know more about, I would have liked to have a day in the beginning where we went through like basic editing. I feel like the majority of the transitions that we use in our films were all pretty basic. And being able to add flair through like editing basics and figuring out like, oh, this looks right with this kind of shot, or this transition should be shorter than what it actually is in iMovie, or something like that would have been really, really helpful. Just to make it look a little bit more professional, because I feel like all of the, like my film for this class, like my films for this class were all very, like they were a lot more basic, because what I learned here helped me figure out an edit for what I made for my like my original, not my original, my audio and video production final. So everything that I learned in your class I was actually able to transfer over to another film class, which is really, really fun. But I sent you that today. That was really cool. But no, thank you so much for that. So editing, I would change moving editing to the beginning so you can figure it out over time and like have that be, like have a foundation for it at least. And then I think if I could make any significant changes to like the class itself, I would add a day to learn about the simple editing techniques, because I would like to know more about that. And then I'd also add Clue to the curriculum, just because it's one of my favorite movies and it's a really good example of a chamber piece. And I like 12 Angry Men, I think it's interesting, but Clue is just so funny. It's got Tim Curry in it. That's a plus in my book. So I think it just would have been really, really fun, and it fits the theme of like all the other movies really well, in that like it's a good comedic break from everything, because there's some really intense movies on that entire list. But no, other than that, and the possibility of like changing the final project, but I already talked about that. Other than that, I don't really have a lot of feedback. I just want to thank you so much for a fun, productive semester, and I can't wait to start public speaking with you in the spring. So thank you so much.